Good evening. My name is Faisal Elkhatib, and I'm with Better Informed Housing, and I've got with me a wonderful gentleman here, a very good friend of mine, Mr. Courtney Jones from the Dearborn Realtist Association. We are also on Facebook Live. It's my first time on Facebook Live, so I'm actually quite excited about this thing right now. So we're here. I'm going to talk a little bit about Better Informed Housing. Better Informed Housing. You can find us at betterinformed.org. You can contact us at 312-533-2688. Our offices are at 218 North Jefferson, Suite 103, Chicago, Illinois 60661. In order to, you can email us at neighbors@betterinformed.org. This is a live broadcast, not only on Facebook Live, but we're live here on CAN TV. You can call. It's a live show. It's a live broadcast. You can call us at 312-738-1060. We've got a couple people on Facebook Live who are also watching us. Hey, guys. So we're going to talk a little bit about housing issues here. And I've got Mr. Jones, and we're going to talk a little bit about a couple things. And most importantly, Mr. Jones, I just recently learned, and I learned it, I believe, from you, that Realtor is not the end-all be-all. And in fact, a Realtor is nothing more than a trade organization. Can you talk to me a little bit about that, and what is it that a realtist is?
Yes, I can. I'm the current president of the Dearborn Realtist Board, the local NARAB, National Association of Real Estate Brokers. We're an African-American trade association where we're really focused on, as a mission, democracy in housing. And often, with great marketing with our partners at the Realtor Association, a lot of times people think, okay, a real estate broker is synonymous with the term realtor, right? So as we kind of stress, as a trade association, a realtist is a member of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers who is committed under the mission of democracy in housing.
So if I'm, just to go back a little bit in history, and Courtney, you've known me for a while, and people who are on Facebook Live, and they're my friends of mine, and generally they know that I am pretty straight, a straight shooter, sometimes a little bit too straight. I kind of said how it really is. If I'm not mistaken, the Realtist Association really started by the Dearborn Association, which was the Chicago chapter, way back in the 40s. Is that correct?
Yes, we were formed in 1941, and our founders came together out of the need to address a lot of the housing issues that impacted the black community. So when you think of, Faisal, things like restrictive covenants, okay, and how black families back in that time period couldn't live out of that square rectangle, if you will, of Wentworth, Cottage Grove, 63rd, 64th to Cermak. So when you think about that, and then the deed restriction making things illegal for black and brown families, it took the collaboration of our founders to come together and say no one is going to pick up that issue, that fight that needed to be fought. So they were the ones that championed that effort.
Now, at the time, were black real estate salespersons allowed to be realtors?
No, at that time, no, that was not the case.
So essentially, realtors had decided that whites only, and realtors were pushing a whites only policy, and so the realtors or the black real estate salespersons at the time decided that they needed something for themselves to really push and get democracy in housing and push for equal rights among African Americans and black people and brown people living in this country, so that way they're not restricted to certain areas. So, for example, like redlining.
Yes, actually, we're in the 50th anniversary of fair housing.
Right.
And there was an act signed in 1968 that made housing fair, right? Made it illegal to practice racial discrimination.
So we have a caller, and I think the act that you're talking about is the Fair Housing Act, which we're celebrating the 50th year, and we're also celebrating the 76th year of the Dearborn Realtist Association. Let's take the first caller.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. And I was hoping that you could address the issue in terms of the evolution of the issue surrounding fair housing, because you're right, it is the 50th anniversary of the Fair Housing Act. But I would argue that today, that assuming that everyone was in 100% compliance with the Fair Housing Act, it still leaves us with the tremendous problem in that there is absolutely nothing that makes it illegal to make a part of the city, in fact, the entire city of Chicago, economically prohibitive in terms of people buying there. And this is the new challenge that is facing many people in large cities, because in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, with white flight and so forth, there wasn't necessarily as much of a shortage of housing. There's access to housing in large cities. Today, it's not that someone is denying a person who's African American or Hispanic the right to live in a place like Lincoln Park. It's simply that Lincoln Park is so prohibitively expensive that they effectively can't live there. As Martin Luther King said, in the latter part of his life, yes, it was one thing to ensure that I could eat at a counter in a restaurant, but if I can't afford to eat there, it does me little good.
Absolutely. No, that's a very good question. So for those of us who are watching us from Facebook Live, the question that came up is essentially now what's happened, even though the Fair Housing Act, if you had 100% compliance with the Fair Housing Act, you still have discrimination based on economic differentiation. And again, essentially what it is a lack of affordable housing within certain urban neighborhoods and certain urban areas. Although, what I would add to that, caller, and thank you very much for calling, is that we don't have anywhere near 100% compliance with the Fair Housing Act. And in fact, we've got several issues where the judiciary itself, when you have violations of the Fair Housing Act and you bring cases of those types of cases to the courts are not hitting back and actually forcing and implementing the requirements of the Fair Housing Act to protect people. And they're requiring a lot of huge leaps and jumps by those who are being discriminated against in order to prove their cases. And it's very hard to prove, but some things are pretty straightforward. So we have a lot that's been achieved by the Fair Housing Act, but we have a long way to go in terms of getting compliance with the Fair Housing Act. And in terms of economic disparity between people, I think we would agree that that's a huge problem that people are facing, is not just a shortage of affordable housing and affordable for even some of just the blue collar, we're not just talking, just the absolute poor. We're actually economically destitute, like homelessness, which is a huge housing issue. But I think our focus today is kind of what we segued into, which was the Fair Housing Act, which is the 50th anniversary of the Fair Housing Act. So, Courtney, where do you see kind of some of the improvements that we should possibly be taking place, or do you see any improvements that we could take in fair housing and kind of helping black home ownership?
Well, to kind of also tap into what the caller shared, and that was a great point leading into a great question. Affordable inventory will definitely become, more and more of an issue. But as we see now across the country, the National Association of Real Estate Brokers has a 2 million black homeowner in 5-year initiative. And as the local chapter here in Chicago, the Dearborn Realtist Board, we're really committed to getting financial literacy, housing counseling out in the neighborhood. It's an essential piece to getting us more tied into how we're spending our money and how that equates to getting approved for an automated underwriting system, right? So there's a couple of advocacy efforts that are being led by NARAB, our national leadership, and that's getting alternative credit scoring models accepted in an automated underwriting program. So it's really necessary, because we have families that are paying $1,500, if not more, a month in rent. So it kind of makes it illogical to assume that they couldn't pay less in a mortgage payment.
Absolutely. I mean, it's interesting you talk about the lending side, because one of the things that we've seen, and I remember from the housing crisis in '08, and even leading up to that, and we're seeing it now today, is some of the things that the Fair Housing Act is not being implemented is the equal opportunity in lending. So where the perception that certain minority groups are a higher credit risk than other groups, and then increasing the interest rates, which in those days they'd call them subprime, now they call them non-prime, but essentially where they would you'd be borrowing two individuals, one white, one black, and the white person's got a 4.1% or 4.2% interest rate, while the black family's got a 5.5 interest rate, and that's a huge difference in what they can afford. I've seen this. I mean, I do a lot of real estate practice, and have you been seeing more of this or seeing this as well, Courtney? And what can you do to stem that?
Yes. Actually, we have, as an association, a working document called the State of Housing in Black America, our Sheba report. And that Sheba report takes on elements of, capital restriction in many ways. So when you talk about things like loan level price adjustments, and you say to yourself, prior to 2002, a black family in a black neighborhood that applied for a $200,000 FHA loan would get similar pricing as someone who was a non-black Hispanic person getting the same type of loan. Well, after the housing crisis, now we have this loan level price adjustment where things like risk mitigation is being taken into consideration.
Okay.
But what really essential to understand is if black homeownership rate back in 1968 was around a 38, 39%, 50 years fast forward, it's about the same currently. Then if we had a housing implosion and what we witnessed in 2008, then it's probably not likely that the smaller portion of homeowners would be able to bring the market down.
Explain that more.
Yeah, so if you have a home ownership rate for non-blacks that's about a 71, 72%.
Yes. Wait. Let's just focus on that for a moment. Non-black home ownership is about 71%. Did I hear that right?
That is correct.
But black home ownership is at 38%.
That is correct. So when you think of risk, odds are if folks were struggling because of, the economic climate and the housing market imploded as we all bear witness to,
right,
the likelihood that 38% would be able to impact that market at a more of an alarming rate than probably 72%, right, closer on the other side of the scale, is probably not statistically possible.
And that's post-crisis. So essentially what we're saying, if I'm reading you, is that the amount of risk that has been allocated, apparently, that black people are higher risk to borrowing for lenders is really not accurate.
I don't know how the data just speaks to it.
But the point is the part of the data that the impact that a default rate you're saying would have based on the amount of homes that are owned right now by black homeowners is going to have a smaller impact on the overall rate of home ownership if there is a default. So what's happening is there's a greater risk factor that's being added to black homeowners that might be a little bit overemphasized.
That's just going by the statistics. Yeah, just going by the data.
We do have a caller. Caller, please go forward. Go ahead. Did we?
Sorry, I dropped it.
No problem. We lost the caller. Caller, call back. Again, this is 312-738-1060. This is a live call.
Hello.
A live session. We're also on Facebook Live. I think we've got a few people who are saying hello out to there on Facebook Live. We're on CAN TV here in Chicago. So we talked about the Fair Housing Act. We talked. Caller's back. Before we jump into the next one, go ahead, caller.
Yes, I just wanted to make a point with regard to the numbers that you were using because it's important for people to understand the context. When we talk about white ownership of housing, that's within the context of a population that's 65% of the total population of the United States. Whereas the African American population, in terms of the numbers, is part of only 13% of the total population. So, in other words, it's not at 38 versus 71. It's 38% of that 13%. So the ability for African Americans to impact the total housing market is much smaller than the larger housing market. People have got to understand African Americans are only 13% of the population. So when you say 38% are homeowners, it's 38% of 13, whereas the white ownership rate is well over 70%, but that's 65% of the total population, which is what whites constitute. So you're absolutely right, except that we need to, emphasize how much more, that disparity, how much more of a disparity exists there. And also, I just want to make this point. we absolutely need these sorts of initiatives which inform people, because financial literacy is one of the reasons that we have these disparities. When you have first-time homeowners, people who don't understand how the system works, it's akin to buying a used car. Someone is going to try and sell you something for the most they can make off of you in interest rates and everything else. Persons who are more financially literate are going to get a better deal. And without these sorts of programs that help people to understand that you don't have to take the 6.5% interest rate when you qualify for a 5.2, and whereas someone else who perhaps knows it somewhat better is in the same position that you're in, knows to take the 5.2. Because they're more financially literate. So we need to talk about those disparities as well, because the reality is that for African Americans, many of them are first-time homeowners as compared to their white counterparts who are second and third-generation homeowners. We have many family members and friends who are homeowners who have that resource to turn to, as opposed to African Americans who are walking in pretty much blind in many cases and not knowing that, that offer that they put on the table, it's not the best that you can get. But all too many people sign that, and then, not knowing that what they just signed away is a percentage point extra a month that they don't have to.
Absolutely. North Caller, thank you very much. You make some amazing points. I think, so just to clarify for those on Facebook Live who may not have heard, what we're talking about and what the caller is bringing up is the percentage that we put up of 71% versus 38%. When you look at the 38% is not the 38% of total homeowners, it's 38% of black people in this country. So the population is 13% African American in this country, and of that, 38% of that population are homeowners, which essentially means that the amount and the impact of the risk factor is even that much lower. The second piece that the caller had made, which I think is an amazing piece, is that, and I think we're going to talk about that a little bit in terms of what we're doing on Saturday, is financial literacy. It's very true. Because of the housing policies, the discriminatory policies over the last several hundred years and the way black people have been treated in this country, you have white people who've had multiple homes and multiple generations over time who have taught their children and taught this financial literacy and have been able to pass that down as to how that functions. And in many cases, you've got a lot of black homeowners who are first-time home buyers. Is that right, Courtney?
No, it is. And I think, as you mentioned, segueing into this weekend, we have a tremendous community Black Wealth Building Day at Malcolm X, where we're bringing all of the resources, all of the partnerships to Malcolm X this Saturday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So let's talk a little bit about the housing counseling piece really quickly. Wouldn't it be exciting to know you can come get your free credit report pulled, not a Credit Karma, not some algorithm that is kind of made up. We're getting into pulling exactly your history, sitting down with you and walking you through how do we get you on the track to home ownership and building wealth. Now, what about those family members who didn't even realize that they're going to get their credit report Faisal pulled, and they're going to say, oh my God, I can get pre-approved today.
Wow.
So we're going to have all of our lender partners and neighborhood banks there as well to kind of walk you through how to get pre-approved. Our goal for this Saturday is 50 pre-approvals, to change the scope of wealth building in our community. Now, what about our kids? Everyone is talking about some of the trauma that our youth are being subjected to. Well, for 6th through 12th graders, we have, being led by Eric Zotterberg, our developer boot camp, where we'll be teaching our kids an understanding of owning real estate, rehabbing real estate, looking at our community and some of the blight as an opportunity to rehabilitate, okay? Now, what about our faith leadership? Well, in the black communities across the country, the staple of stability in our community often is our faith leaders, our faith leadership centers. Right. So as we partner with amazing partners like Reverend Johnny Miller on the west side of Chicago, Brother Leonard in the Nation of Islam on the south side of Chicago, and all of the different faith leaders between the different areas, because there's some tremendous partnerships. We have our Black Caucus leadership, our City Hall Department of Planning and Development with Anthony Simpkins and his group. We have so many folks that are really trying to lock arms, to deliver resources and tools from down payment assistance,
Wow.
you know, all the different things that our community needs, it deserves. Well, the National Association of Real Estate Brokers and the local Dearborn Realtist Board chapter are bringing those resources to Malcolm X Faisal on Saturday.
So this is the Realtist Association. I'm going to throw it back on the screen so everybody sees it. So this is on May 26th, National Association of Real Estate Brokers. These are the Realtists, not the Realtors, Realtists. There is definitely a difference, everyone. Building Black Wealth through Home Ownership. It's going to be on Saturday, May 26, 2018. The doors open at 9 a.m. at Malcolm X College here in Chicago. If you want to know where that is, it's about 1900 West Jackson. It is free for everybody to come. As Mr. Jones has indicated, you're going to have lawyers, you're going to have lenders, you're going to have groups of people coming in to kind of help bring together. And we've got some great names on here. We've got LaShawn Ford, the state rep, Michael Scott, alderman. We have the Honorable Danny Davis is going to be there. Fritz Cagle, who's the recent Cook County assessor, who
A candidate.
He's going to be running coming up in November. Craig Allison from IDFPR, Leonard Mohammed, Pastor Miller, Eric Soderberg, Rob Rose, and Bridget Gaynor from the Cook County Land Bank as Cook County Commissioner.
And actually, Faisal, if I could share really quickly, one of the powerful things about having Craig Allison, who is a tremendous partner of the Dearborn Realtist Board, is some of the community, in terms of family members, may have a blemish like a felony or misdemeanor background.
Okay.
Well, he and his board has been tremendous about being committed to helping folks have a career in real estate. So we're encouraging folks, come out, don't allow having a blemish in your background deter you from the process. He's going to explain a little bit about the hearing process and how folks are still getting licensed. Now let's talk a little bit about our real estate attorneys. You know, we have a help desk, you know, that is going to welcome your pain. I'm telling our family members, you're going through the runaround with loan modification, bring your documents. You know, you have building code violations. You might have a building that's been in the family for a long time. It's been transitioned to, you know, the youth of the grandparent or the parent, and you're not really aware of how to navigate, how to cure, how to satisfy, how to take care of that. Bring that with you. You know, what about tax payment issues and folks being concerned about how to redeem property? Well, we're telling people, come on Saturday, and we're trying to match up issue, concern with remedy and solution.
Fantastic. So let me get this straight. You're going to help us. You're going to have actual attorneys giving legal advice or legal counsel to help these people solve whatever issues that they have, at least from an initial basis, to give them the launch forward to solve their problems.
Yes, Faisal, that's exactly what the goal is.
So from landlord-tenant issues, from building violations, from foreclosure issues, from tax redemption issues, tax appeal issues. If you want to buy a house, you're looking at, you know, taking that next step in building the wealth for your family and for the coming generations. You're going to actually have lenders who are doing pre-approvals, doing credit checks. This is an amazing opportunity. So this is part of, I mean, we've talked about this before, but this is part about the 2 million black homeowners over 5 years. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. And what I love about partnership is we have people like our state president from the Illinois Association of Realtors, Matt DeFanis. Amazing
Great
partnership.
guy. Great
and
guy.
With our partners with the Chicago Association of Realtors, a lot of the history 50 years ago to date, we're working very closely to erode and build bridges, because if everyone is bought into this democracy and housing mission, like I know our realtor partners are. We're working very closely to deliver an experience to the community that's valuable, because we all win. Chicago wins as we continue to revitalize the neighborhood with the people that live in the neighborhood, so that the equity and the wealth that's been lost, they can gain back.
So essentially we're talking about development without gentrification.
Amen.
So really quick, I want to throw in, we are at Better Informed Housing. Well, a little too much of a zoom there. Better Informed Housing. You can reach us after this show at 312-533-2688, or you can email us at neighbors@betterinformed.org. I do want to throw up again, we got Wealth Building Day on May 26th. That's this Saturday. Do not miss it. Doors open at 9 a.m. It's going through the entire afternoon. You've got some amazing people and amazing opportunities. We are very grateful to have Courtney Jones here today. My name is Faisal Elkhatib from veteranforum.org. We'll be here next month, and we'll let you know how the whole event went. Thanks again, Courtney, for joining us. And
Thank you for having me.
we'll see you on Saturday. Take care.